We're going to stop at the first day of the wedding. There is 7 days. With each day, one of the beggars coming to bless the couple of the children with the story. Rebbe Nachman never goes back to the story, to the first part of the royal prince that is given the kingdom and the rulership during his father's lifetime, nor do we go onto the story of the 7th day with the beggar that does not have feet. These two, he said, will be repeated when the Mashiach comes. So this is a story that on its own has already a lot of concepts that are self-explanatory. For instance, here there is an explanation of the levels of the soul and so on being remembered as the redemptive sort of process, but most of it is still in the symbolic form, and we're going to have to sort of explain the main lines. To go there, I have to first introduce you to some of the concepts that the Kabbalah speaks about and see how it is that Rebbe Nachman teaches them and understands them. What Kabbalah says is that at the beginning, that is at the heart of things, there is absolutely no time. On that kind of level, there is a completeness that is absolute, and there the light of God is infinite and is not contained whatsoever. From there, it draws on to an aspect of the beginning, that is the revelation of the light and the beginning of time. The Kabbalah speaks about the levels that created time, and they speak about it in terms of the vessels, that there was initial sort of vessels holding the attributes of the godly and the divine in a way that it could be perceived immediately, and those vessels broke. When those vessels broke, they created this form of the world as we know it, and what they mainly created was the order of time and space as we know and as we experience it now. The way that we experience things now, things seem to have a beginning, they seem to have a continuation, they seem to reach towards an end. The way things are essentially, if it was not for the consciousness of the observers, it would not be like this at all. It would be like the sustaining of being infinitely attached to its root. The way that we experience things now is in a fragmented way, and we call this the breaking of the vessel. And what the consciousness does is that since it is drawn that time of unity, what it does is that it goes through time to sort of create the connections between all the elements, being that it knows them deeply and intimately, and then eventually helps itself to the cognitive process of the wholeness. What the story of the blind beggar brings about is this idea that within ourselves, within our own awareness, there are these clues there that can draw us to this kind of knowledge where we can feed our consciousness that expresses itself within time from a point that is absolutely removed from time, from a point that is absolutely dissociated from the point of the breaking of the vessel. There are 4 letters to the name of God in the Kabbalistic revelation of the Torah. There's Yud, K, Vav, K. We had explained that each one of those has an extension in which the name of God becomes written again, because they're all included in one. And we spoke about it. There's an extension of the name of God relating to the letter Yud, in which all the detailed letters are spelled out with a Yud, and that's the extension that has the value of 72. There's another one where it is all in Yuds except for the Aleph in the middle, that's the extension of 63. Then we have the one where it's all in Alephs, that's the extension of 45, and the one that is all in He, that's the extension of 52. So we say that the first two ones, the Yud and the He, on this kind of level, there is absolute completeness, and there is no breaking. And we learned some of this in the meditation. This is why the meditation sort of focuses on the letters Yud and He, to sort of reconnect with this state of consciousness where the breaking does not take place. But where the breaking took place was in the letters Vav and He of the name. The letters Vav and He, which are called the son and the daughter, or the man and the woman, the boy and the girl here in the story, they go through the experience of the breaking. And for that, they go through the experience of time. And within the experience of time, there will be the unfolding of all the elements of oneness, a singularity in the beginning, which will eventually give rise to the idea of oneness as unification. And the 45 and the 52, together they become 97, which is the numerical value of Zman, of time. All that we do with the unifications that deal in the Kabbalah, with the unifications that we do through the meditations and so on, and through the prayers and the learning that we do, we bring, so to say, the tikkun, or the repair to those two aspects of 45 and 52, to bring them from what is Kabbalistically called back to back to the level that is called face to face. Bring the man and the woman face to face. This is the mystery of the story of Adam and Eve in the Bible, that they had to be extracted from one another in order to know one another and be brought face to face, and eventually have to repair through time that type of unity, the unity that is essentially initially known as a unity as singularity, and bring it out as unification. In a symbolic way, all the souls of all men and women are included in Adam and Eve. They are the representation of all of humanity, but they do not become the whole of it until all of humanity is eventually there. And what was included in them as one has to be expressed through the many that will come from them, and through the unity that will be brought eventually with the knowledge of God, with the knowledge of the root of this oneness. And then being one would not just be the idea of including everything in a potential way. It would be an inclusiveness that would be actualized. And this is the idea of time. What time does is that it clears out and it distinguishes between all the elements that were completely one, if you want, prior to what the physicists call the time of the Big Bang, and it expresses it. It expresses it through the idea of space. The idea of space not only in a material way, but also in a transcendental way, in the way of time. There is a particular space to time, and what that space does, that it expresses, shows, reveals all of the elements that were one and that were completely bound. The role that consciousness plays in this is that it is the reflection within time of that time of unity. And what consciousness does, that it basically, it unites between all the elements, relating one with another. What the story that we heard speaks of is this idea of the repair that the consciousness has through the history of time. The first part speaks about the king that gives over his kingdom to his son while he's still alive. This is an obvious type of symbolic understanding of the creation of the world. It gives the kingship away to the human beings, that is the transfer of consciousness. But he is still here. He is still alive in the sense that it does not change out anything to him. As he says to his son in the story, he says, I see that you will lose the consciousness, you will lose your kingdom, but still I will be happy. It will not change anything to me. This idea of not being changed is the idea of the light of God that is not affected by going into time, because it transcends it from all parts. But he says, if you remain happy through the fall, then I will be even happier. That is that although the events in time are completely known to God, there is one thing where the light of God is increased within our realm. That is when we carry the memory of this initial point, of the point of oneness, even into the times in our life and into the times in the history of humanity when that memory is not clear at all. And when we are able to carry that kind of memory of the initial joy that there existed, then we increase the light of God within our realm. The son then took the kingdom with a firm hand, and that he was naturally drawn to the idea of wisdom, and that he appreciated it very much, and says that all the system of the rewarding the son established was around this idea of wisdom. This is obviously a way to look back for the initial place. This is what the wisdom does. So it makes use of the wisdom to sort of find his way back, but then on making essentially use of that and not of the joy that the father commanded him to observe, he loses the meaning of what he's looking for, and that in turn turns into a depression. He turns to a depression. He says he became an atheist, and all the people of the land became atheists. Then, since he had a spark of good in him, from time to time he remembered that place and remembered vaguely. He remembered that there existed an initial state of joy, but then he would go back into the investigation without joy, if you want. and he would go down again. Then immediately we go into the story of the children that got lost and the beggars. The initial point of an introduction is crucial. It gives us this idea, this introduction, that eventually everything is connected with its root, and that everything is absolutely known, even to our own self. And it's just a matter of sort of increasing and decreasing this awareness. But we hear a very important thing here. That is that the father is completely aware that the son is going to fall. And that fall, he should still keep his joy. That is that the steps of a person, even away from the spiritual root, are completely there. They're completely indicated. They're there since the beginning of time. But at the beginning of time, when things were all one, there was a proximity that was such. When things are one, and the distance is not there yet. So there is no true point of being close as a crucial part of things. Everything is close. That is, that even at the lowest stage, what we would call now the lowest stage, there was a closeness with the highest one. And at that stage, things were so much one that the reminder of the godly was in such a constant state that there was no such point as drawing far away from the root. Furthest places within the soul, within space, within time, were there right next to the closest ones and the ones in the beginning. When the stretching was done, only when time, eventually space, took place, then there was an idea of near and far. There was an idea of up or down. There was an idea of good and bad. Initially, there was no such idea. There was the idea of life. It was like what the Torah calls the tree of life, where everything is absolutely connected with the root. But what happens in the science of the tree of the good and bad, the tree of knowledge, then there is a distance. And the experience of distance is the experience of the end as a detachment from the beginning, and that is the idea of death. And the Torah says explicitly that out of experiencing the tree of good and bad, one eventually experiences death. Death is the idea of the disconnection from the beginning, when things are not fed from their root anymore, then they are dead. Here, in the beginning of the story, we are told about this. We are told that there is a state where time does not have a relevance. That is the state of the knowledge of the Father, and the indication that the Father gives that the reminder of this initial state is absolute, uncensored joy. That on that kind of level, you are still with the root. Even if it is to remind yourself of joy after the worst of falls, you are still carrying the root with you. And eventually you're going to be able to translate that idea of joy into consciousness and intelligence. But this is a clear indication, this is the awareness that we have to take with us throughout the story of the 7 days, that the repair comes from the knowledge of the root. And the first day is one of the forms of the experiences of that root. First of all, it starts with the idea of the flight and the children that flew, that went into the forest and got lost. Flight in Hebrew is brecha, escape. Brecha has the letters, interestingly, of behira, choice, the ability to choose, free choice. And the Kabbalah teaches us that the purpose of the breaking of the vessel, or the purpose under what we're explaining now, going into the timely, was for the creation of the awareness of the free choice. If you want, what the distinction is from this initial state, where everything is known, and that state where we are in, where we can say, but the moment where we are in, is this idea of choice. When we go into time, we have choice. We are free to choose. Why? Because in simple terms, when you are within time, so you do not experience the outcome of things, and your awareness works in a way that not knowing this outcome of things, it has the awareness of choosing between a thing and another. It does not change anything to the knowledge of the Father who knows whether the Son will fall or not. But it changes the thing for us, which is that once there's a separation between the beginning and the end, then there is choice. Because in a simple way, time works in a way of cause and effect, and the causality of things is exactly the determining point of choice. Even though within the cause, all the effects that eventually come, within this very day now, are the roots and the grains of all the days that will eventually come. But still, since we experience this day as a separated thing, and we do not have that experience, then we have this awareness of choice, and that comes with time. Time creates this awareness of free choice, and this is the forest that the children were sent into. Because there, a boy and a girl were lost. That is, the idea of the significance of time, if you want, within the human soul, with the representation that it has of the giver and the recipient, which is explained here as the boy and the girl, which are the names that we spoke about, the ma and the ben, that eventually, through their union, comes a total awareness of the godly within time. There are still little children. That is the connotation of the lack of full awareness, and they do not have any food, and they start to cry and beg for food. That is all that they know. And that state of the lack of knowledge, the lack of the knowledge of the end of things, and the satisfaction can come only from that point. This is a thing that is willed by God, and that is the main expression of the soul in this world. The main expression of the soul in this world is through this idea of lack, through this idea of hunger. We lack in this world, and we are brought to the point where we're going to ask for the meaning of things. Only by this act, by this incredible act of asking for the meaning of things, will we come face to face with this awareness that we ourselves carry the answer. If we did not, we would never come to the point of even asking the question. And that is the beautiful thing within this frame of awareness, is that each soul that is a component of this original singular unity has a question about it that will bring it the answer that it exactly needs. That is the point that the Kabbalists explain, that the gates, the 50 gates of repentance, are connected with the 50 questions that are asked in the book of Job. If any of you is going to read a book within all of the Bible that is going to bring that kind of awareness within him, that should be the book of Job. The book of Job is a book that it's generally seen as a book on the acceptance of suffering and so on. It has like sort of a dark connotation for a lot of people. But it's actually an incredible book of wisdom and mystery. And it is the book that brings about this point of the search of meaning that is only solved in the end when God brings out the questions. There are 50 questions there that are asked. And each one of them, according to the tradition of the Kabbalah, is a particular gate of repentance. Each human soul has the connection with one of these gates. What we do during the 49 days between the festival of Pesach and the festival of Shavuot, we clear those gates. Each one of us, we clear all of those gates. Each gate includes all of the 50. And each one of us goes to the clearing of all of the attributes with the questioning until we come to the point of the receiving of the Torah, which is the answer, from the time of Pesach. We start in the extreme point of exile, which is in Egypt, with the loss of memory, the loss of knowledge, with the loss of language, to the point of the 49 days of the walk in the desert towards the mountain of Sinai, where we eventually get to the speech of God. The book of Job, the main sort of, if you want to take the main idea out of this, out of all the questions that God asks, that God brings Job to ask, is you have to dare ask the questions if you want an answer. You have to go at a deeper point within your own self so that the questions do actually come up. A lot of the questions in the beginning is going to be a lot of blabber, or it's going to be a lot of questions that you have heard other people ask. It will not be your own. But every person in this world has a book of questions. They have a book of very intimate questions that ask about the nature of things, about the nature of awareness, about the nature of their lives in this world, their place in this world, and so on. Most of the people stop short of asking the questions. They hop on an easy answer train, and off they go, and they forget that they even one day dared. The freshness of the mind of a child is due to the fact that it's in a constant state of question. And the dullness, on the contrary, of the adult mind is that there's very few little questions left in that mind. The child dares ask, and he asks unabashedly. He asks in a frank way, open and innocent way. He asks truly about the nature of things, about their name and their use and so on. But at a certain point, the system of answers that people have established to the point of creating all the societies that they live in come down so hardly on those poor minds that very few questions are left after that. And what the Torah says is that the gates of repentance, if a person wants to return to God, he has to dare ask the question, and dare go in a deeper and deeper way to really ask the fundamental ones. And there is one that only he can ask. So, and then once the person is completely aware of his true lack, once he has seen that all the questions that he had were not questions at all, and that he has gone further and further to really ask what he truly wants, what he truly needs, and what is the answer that he wants, or she wants, and that the person has gone into this by eliminating all the other questions that were not true questions at all, that were not true points of lack at all, and they did not stem from a desire that was truly deep, or did not stem from a truly deep will. So when a person is on that kind of level, asks the question, then does he enter his or her own gate. In an interesting way, repentance in Hebrew is the teshuvah, and teshuvah means the answer. And what the Kabbalists teach us is that the answer consists in actually to dare ask your question, to dare go to a deeper way and truly question the nature of things and how they are connected with your own self. So the children are there. They're sort of at that state. And then this is where the tikkun starts to take place. All the 7 beggars come up to them. And they're beggars too. The idea of beggar, as Rebbe Nachman has said, is a person that has begged, is a tzaddik. And the righteous have come to this point of righteousness through the begging and through the asking. And the asking ultimately is epitomized in its higher state in the idea of prayer. When a person comes and he says that they are the beggars because everything they have achieved, they have prayed for. Everything they have achieved, they have dared ask for. And I've come to the point here that in the story, this is the name that Rebbe Nachman gave them and found them with highest of qualifications that he found, and that's the one of beggars. The one that constantly begs for relentlessly begs for the question to come up within his soul. So they come, and the 7 of them have a defect, have apparently a defect, come and they bless them. They bless the boy and the girl. And each one blesses them with a blessing that they should be like him. The first one should be blind, the second one should be deaf, and so on, but not exactly in those terms. The first one blesses them with a long life. The other one is going to bless them with a good life, and so on. Each one of them will come and bless them, and will leave. That is the point, if you want, historically, that is the point where the teachings have come unto us to help us go back to that state of unity. They came 6 times in history, and the 7th one will be the one of the Mashiach. According to a lot of the interpreters, the story of Rebbe Nachman of this one, all the 7 are the 7 shepherds of faith, which are Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Moses, Aaron, Joseph, and David. But according to others, and this is what I incline more towards, is that it was a teacher that brought, if you want, forms of the revelation of the Torah at different points in history, left us sort of to say with the blessing of their teaching, and left us to the pondering of those teachings until the revelation comes of truly what they mean. The first one is Moses, who gave us the Torah, although they do not necessarily appear in the chronological order in the story. And the teaching that Moses gave was the one of Torah, the one of that direct face-to-face contact with God. The other teaching of King David through the art of prayer, through the book of Psalms, 5 books of Psalms that parallel the 5 books of Moses. The third one was a teacher, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who gave us the 5 books of the Zohar, in which he explains how everything is an embodiment of the divine. The next one was our teacher, Rabbeinu Ari, Rabbi Tzchak Luria from Tzfat, came to explain even in greater details the idea of creation and how everything that exists is rooted in the moment of creation in a very detailed, structured way. The next one was the Baal Shem Tov, or the Master of the Good Name, who came to explain to us how to actually live in the simplest way with those teachings. The 6th one was none but Rebbe Nachman himself, who, as we will see in the day pertaining to him, brought the teaching of the repair in this world. These are the 6 that come and that bless the children, and then the children go on their own. If you want, this is the entry into time. We can see this as initially that all this, with the breaking of the vessels when they're in the forest, happened, if you want, in an essential way prior to history as we know it, and then history unfolds and those teachers come. What the teaching of the blind beggar speaks about is this idea of withholding the beginning and the end as one. He blesses the children that they should live a long life. In the Hebrew text, it is not a long life. He blesses them with a length of days. And if you want to translate it in even a closer way, he blesses them with a lengthening of days. He blesses them with an awareness that gains a flexibility within time, where a person can come to the point where they can live a whole life in one day. He says the fact that he is constantly immersed in that kind of an awareness, he appears to the world to be completely blind. He appears to the world to be completely blind because he says expressively that the whole time of the world does not amount to him to the time of a single gaze. So he appears to be blind, but he says he's not blind at all. He can see all things at once. He can see the beginning and the end. In everything that he lives, every moment that he lives is related to its root and to its end. That is, that he lives it at the most exalted state in the sense of the root, in the sense of the singular, when everything was completely one. And he lives it at the most exalted state, when it is manifested, united, when everything will eventually be completely one again, although in this way of the manifested. Since he sees that, everything is already in a perfected state where he is. So he knows exactly the path that the thing has taken to be where it is now. He knows exactly the path that it has to take to be in its perfected state. This is an indication that such an awareness actually exists, and there is such a teaching. That is the teaching of the prophets, obviously. And that is the teaching of the prophecy of Moses. The prophecy of Moses was different from all the others in the sense that we see in the Torah that Moses is told by God, I revealed myself to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob by the name Shin Dalet Yud. But the name Yud Kei Vav Kei, I have not let myself be known unto them through that name. And that is now, all the revelation that's going to happen through you is going to be through that name. Shin Dalet Yud is the name of limitations. It spells Shaddai. The teachers say that the explanation of that name is She Amar le'olamo dai, which means he said to his world, enough. There's a name of limitations, until here. That is the idea of the circularity. Shin, that Dalet Yud is 314. That is the number pi, and that denotes the relation to the circumference with the point of the center. So the center is at a precise point, and so is the end. That is the awareness that Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov had. But the transcendental point of Yud Kei Vav Kei, the name of God, Havaya, which means was, is, and will be at once, this idea of the being transcendent of time was not revealed to them, only to Moses. This is the idea where the sages say that where the prophecy of Moses was different from all the others, is in the fact that he said this, and the other prophets said like this. Said this in the sense that he pointed at the object itself, whereas all the other prophets pointed at an awareness that had to go down one step from the object. In the training in prophecy, there was to say that the ultimate voice of prophecy is the voice of Moses, and that all the other prophets, at the highest stage, the voice of God that they hear speak to them and take them out of time is the voice of Moses. That is linked with an idea that we find in the Midrash that Moses was taken out of time. Before the entrance into the land of Israel, when the children of Israel were to go into the land, God says to him, come on top of the hill and let me show you all the land and the Lebanon and so on. And the sages said that he was shown there all the generations that were, that are, and that were eventually to be, each one, with its judges, with its wise men, with its thieves, with the murderers, with the runaways, with the rock and rollers, with everything. Each one of them at every place where he was. And this is not the first time. We see that already in the Midrash. We see this with Adam. Adam is shown all of this too. Not only that, but Adam is given a book where all the generations of the world are written. This is the book of the Raziel. It is a mystical book that is mentioned a lot of times in the Zohar and in the Midrashim. And in that book were written all the generations that were to come. And this book is mentioned in the Talmud, where we see that some of the teachers saw in that book that teachers was going to pass away, and the next one was going to replace him. And we see that was a point of awareness that they got to. Some of them grasped it for a moment, others stayed in that kind of awareness. One awareness was the complete extraction from the boundaries of time. The level of the manifestation of God within time happens also in a way that things have a beginning, a middle, and an end. This is how the manifestation of the 10 attributes come. The 10 attributes are simply an extension of those 3 ideas of the beginning, the middle, and the end. Into each one, if they are distinct, each one includes all the others, so you have 9 there. Plus the total is 10. So you have a necessity of the revelation of God to happen through time within those 10 attributes. But there is a light within those vessels that gives them life, and that light is not to be found within time at all. It is to be found within the heart of consciousness. And consciousness, awareness, operates in a way that it is transcendent of time entirely. And the revelation that Moses was given was a full gift of the secret of awareness, to the point that he was able to draw to the heart of things, to such a point that he was able to relate entirely to their place in the beginning and to their place in the end. Amazing as it seems, this is one of the teachings that the Lubavitcher Rebbe, may he have a speedy recovery, when he spoke about himself, he said he became used and accustomed since he was a 3-year-old boy to think of the world in the Messianic times, to think of the world in its perfected state. And it changes things entirely when you think of the world in this way. You judge every situation, every encounter, every person, compared to the place where they will eventually be at their perfected state. So in the complete acceptance of the place where they are now, because you know that they have to go through this path to get eventually to the highest point at the reunification with God. And that gaze alone, that gaze where you see them there, and where you can portray them there, helps them and brings more light into their own road, where they will have more of the awareness that they are in the place where God wants them to be exactly. And this is the teaching here of the blind beggar. It says that people left on ships, we see that afterwards the ships are the bodies. The ships broke, they came upon a tower, and they stayed in the tower there, and the remedy for them was this awareness that they had to remember all the process of their own identity, to find out how they got there in a certain way. They started to reminisce, and we see that the oldest remembers less than the youngest. As we explained, that's because of this lost ability that the oldest really has to question. And he remembers, though, to the time where the umbilical cord was cut. He remembers the time of the break. It's already a great thing. But then you see immediately that the younger one, the one that is able to go into younger awareness, we'll explain what the younger awareness is afterwards, remembers a thing that is entirely remote and much higher than that, because he remembers a time where the lamp was still lit. That is the time when he was inside of the uterus. And of course, you cannot even compare these two types of awarenesses when one has already breathed the air of the world, or when one is still completely connected with the root. And then there is the one that remembers the formation of the body, and there's the same sort of quantum leap between this one and the next, which is that he remembers the time of the gathering within the physicality. Then there is the one that remembers the moment of the conception. This is also a tremendous quantum leap. Why? It's because out of the united point, now he goes into a divided point, into a point where the unity is beyond the point of separation. For the drop was both in the father and in the mother, and the unity that exists between those two drops is not even experienced in the father and the mother, right? And he remembers the time where they joined him to make him. And the next one remembers even bigger than this, where he was completely existing at the same time within the father and the mother. And here you have this idea that we spoke about, which is sort of like the crucial idea in this, which is how things come from the potential into actual, from a united state into a greater united form. There is separated within the father and the mother, right? But there's truly a union there. There is a being there that is not at all experienced because it has not entered the realm of time, right? It is there, it is potentially, it is living time in a state of impregnancy within the awareness of both the father and the mother, right? But there's a unity there because everything that will eventually unfold, like we said, was there in the beginning. So this soul is here, but it is there in a totally separated state, apparently. It is a completely unified state, much more than the time of the conception. Then there is this even greater state, and that is the state of the soul, of the nefesh, of the ruach, and the neshama. That is the fragrance of the fruit prior to the time that it entered into the fruit. This is the nefesh, the state of being, the vibrancy of the soul on its own, prior to the time that it is related to a cause like the parents. Then there is the ruach, and every time this is like a quantum leap, like we said, from one to onto the other. And the ruach says there's the smell of the fruit prior to the time that it entered the fruit. It's even like a thinner of a feeling. The vibration of the smell is even finer one. And then there is the appearance of the fruit prior to the time that it entered the fruit at all, which means nothing that we could say was a fruit prior to the time that it was a fruit. That is in the higher sort of unified state. And then there is the baby. This is the youngest one, which is only a question, if you want. It's just come in this world, so he remembers the question, and he remembers all of that and nothing at all. Because in this state of nothingness, everything was completely one. And this is a state that exists within our own awareness right now. The ego then comes, and the ego, in the language of the Torah, is the idea of renewal, is to bring back the youth. King David says in the Psalms, renew like the eagle your youth. Of the eagle is the renewal of youth. The idea of the renewal of youth is to have the constant awareness of the beginning, the constant awareness of exactly where you are from, and to draw every point of consciousness from that, to align one's life with that kind of knowledge. As you draw more and more back into yourself and into the questioning, you are not this or you are not that, this is not the question that you are asking. You come to a point at this state of nothingness where you can completely accept that you are originated in a state that is outside of time. This is where your consciousness comes from, into time. That's how it gathers the information. That's how it makes everything one. That's how it knows that this state is on the table and is able to make sense of all of those things. It's because these are congruent events related to the time where all was absolutely known. And this is the teaching of the ego that says, I am very old, but I'm not born yet. Which means that the end and the beginning are completely one. And this is where the blind beggar is at a time where things are completely so much that the beginning and the end are one, that things are into the nothingness already. So he doesn't see them. He doesn't see that middle state where things seem to exist for a moment, only to express a lack. we will see afterwards, for the next day, we will speak about that lack. And there will be an expression of the explanation of what lack is in the story of the next day. But in the story of this day, which is the teaching of Moses, what it is that there is a state of prophecy that comes from that point. And that state of prophecy makes it that the words of the Torah are drawn from there to a point that they are relevant to every person, every day of his life, in any kind of situation where the person is. The commentaries of the Torah are a demonstration about this. Through thousands and thousands and thousands of pages, what the teachers have done is show the relevance of each one of the teachings, even of things that seem completely remote and obsolete in the Torah, which is the revelation of Moses, like the story of the generations of the generals of Esav and so on, and the one that begot the other, that seems absolutely useless to us now. But through the learning, we see that this actually addresses every person, every day of his life. This is because it is a teaching that is transcendental of time. Through this, through the gaze into this state of things, we are able to stretch our days into the point of being lifetimes. This is the teaching of this beggar. The length of days, the lengthening of days. The days is basically, it is a measure of a person's life, of a human being's life. This day, it is a good day or it is a bad day. This is how we measure time. And this is how the accumulation of things basically happens with the cycle of sleep and awakening that is experienced in the day, where we gather all the information, or we draw information afterwards into our sleep state and the dreams and so on. This is a part of the cycle. There is an idea where you can absolutely, and this is what this teaching is about, is draw to the source every day of your life, to the point of being able to have the complete experience of renewal in that day. This is a teaching that King David speaks about. He says, who is the man that desires life? The one who loves days to see good. Who is the man that desires life? To this expression of the desire that is within the person. And this desire that's going to bring to this individual all the teachings of that particular day, and to be able to connect them with their root and keep this awareness. It says, he who loves days to see good. He loves days to see good, to see the good. That is, that this understanding that the joy does not stop, that this is also an expression of joy. And for this you have to love the day. Love the day, this is a great understanding, stems from the fact that you have come to be at peace with the fact that you are working for this day. That you are coming from a place that does not have time to a place that has time. And from that place that does not have time, you're going to bless this day that has time. And the blessing of this day will be that you will eventually bring a greater awareness around you. You can bless the day, pray for the day, express to the day that you love it in a clear and expressive way. This is not a joke. This is not like, you could say, there's a point of understanding, there's a particular angle in the mind. No. To really comprehend this, that this day is a complete revelation of the godly within the frame of time, within what we call, what we call the Mauben, the son and the daughter, the Vav and the He of the name of God. There's a union there that is made by this day and will not be made by any other day. This day carries all the memory of the world in it. It has the beginning because it is the expression of the beginning. That's where the root of things is taking things to this state, right? And it is the root for the coming days. On this very day, you have the beginning and the end, and you can reach for them. And surely they are available. They're certainly available just by the fact that we are aware, that we are conscious, that we seek for the interpretation. to really go on to the path of this understanding, you have to bless that very day. This is what the blind beggar comes and he teaches us. You can stretch things so much. If you bless that day, if you love that day, if you tell the day that you love it. I'm not saying that you should just think about it. This is like you should really actively tell the day that you love it and become aware of the day as an entity that you are going through that carries the full revelation of God. This, when you love it, then you become aware of the good that is in it. Then you become aware of the teachings that are in it. And then you become aware of this idea that you have to keep a joy, whether you consider it or not to be a good or bad day. Through this, there is a shift of awareness that comes, and this idea that the day itself can give you back this information, that you can bring this information from the elements of the day, from the encounters, from things within time, within space, within the being, that will carry the messages and the elements of memory that will bring you back into the furthest past or back into the future. This is the name of Moses. Arizal has explained, he said that the name of Moses is Mem Shin He, which is formed by Mashihayahu Sheyehyeh. What there was is what there will be. Complete understanding that Moses gave to us through the gift of the Torah. That's because anything that stems from this type of prophecy carries the prophecy in the fullest. Even one letter of that revelation is completely enough to have a journey outside of time. Our pains, our limitations, our being stuck within the hesitations of our own choices and the labyrinths of choice that we go into, where we do not know, where we are faced with seeming evidence of our incapacity to deal with things, come from the fact that we consider ourselves forever stuck in time. And the fact is that you can draw the healing from the moment where people were aware of how to heal whatever it is that you have, or from the moment that people will be again aware of how to heal what you have. In a sense, where humanity will know it. A person can now cure the cancer if that person could only draw that type of knowledge from the moment where people will know how to cure a cancer, or from a moment where people knew how to cure a cancer. We have forgotten only now. But the truth is, when you look at this understanding, you will see that the beyond now is very much now. It's happening immediately. That right now, what gives shape to the world as we know it within time is elements that are completely outside of time, that deal with bringing this ultimate state of unity that existed in a potential way, if you want, before the entrance into time, bring it within time in a way that it's manifested and clearly experienced by all the elements once they have all been extracted. As the sages say, the son of David, that is the Messiah, and the revelation of this type of knowledge will not come until all the souls will have extracted from the body of Adam HaRishon, till all the souls will have come out. When all the elements are out, then they can be one again. Then they can experience what there was in the beginning with greater light within time. The love of the day expresses that in a matter that it brings out the faith from this place. It brings out the faith from this place where we definitely know. This is what faith is. You have faith. It's because although it is not clear in the logical mind, you definitely know that there is an outcome. And that knowledge is what is being expressed, the faith. When we have faith in ourselves, within that deeper point, and we can draw this kind of knowledge within the present, and we can have the experience of it historically. What the science is finding out now in scientific circles. What they're finding out and what they're discovering is this idea that the world is being constantly extracted from without time to within time. There is theories now that are emerging where the world starts to make sense, like the superstrength theory and so on, where what is being taught is this idea of the emergence from without time to within time. And eventually, like a lot of physicists, there's among them an English one by the name of Roger Penrose, eventually we'll have to deal with the fact that it is consciousness that plays an active role in the manifestation of understanding things within time. Because the place of consciousness is definitely rooted in that state where things are without time. On our level, the experience of the love of days, like I said, is the extracting of this constant faith that this fleeting moment that we are going through, this charge of awareness, this charge of awareness that we know in a deep sense only as the expression of love. The expression of love means that intimately there was a bond. Intimately there was a bond between this day and me, but somehow I have let go of it at a certain point in my life. The expression of love is the renewal of that bond. And love is the expression of renewal in this world. Everything is renewed through love. And by the clear expression, in a simple form, through the form of prayer in that day, within that day, where the questioning is opened up again, and the form of the blessing of that day, where we bless that day and we express to that day our love that we have for it, we actually renew this awareness of the beginning of things, and in return this day gives us its secret, its intimate connection with us and our place within that day, to the point that we can find the liberating moment of the day within it, which is the blessing that the blind beggars gave to the children. When the redemption will come, this will be an awareness that will be given to all. And the travels that will be able to be done in those times will be travels within time. And we'll take mind trips, if you want, within time, to the point that we'll be actually able to experience and live things that were and things that will be, like the prophets did. This in itself is the secret of the redemption of all the generations come. This is the mystery of the resurrection of the dead. Within it there is a lot of things to be understood. But as you will look back into the story of the 7 beggars, you will go back again on the story of the beggar of the first day. When you will have time to go over it again, you will see there is in this all the elements, a step of revelations to be made that Rebbe Nachman put in the simplest words. So it is my blessing to you and to this day that Be'ezrat Hashem we might see this awareness coming back into the world again, and that all will be able to draw from the wells of knowledge and complete awareness of God. Amen.